Good day, everybody. Welcome to our February tips and tricks. We're going to have Alex do kind of maybe a recap of one Mike Moscato did last year on job tickets and user actions in ES. We didn't have the video. I think Jude actually had messed up the video on that one last year, so we figured it'd be good to kind of rehash this, go over it. We get a lot of questions on this anyway on support. So we'll give Alex a stab at it, make sure it gets recorded and posted properly. So again, just to remind everybody, or if you're new, controls for GoToWebinar or should be at the top left of your screen. You can zoom out or zoom in as needed to fit your screen better. Any questions or answers, we'll go ahead and put those in the little control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Just type them in there. If I think it's worth stopping to cover something, because it's something that people are confused on, I'll do that during the webinar, as long as it doesn't throw Alex off too much. If not, we'll wait to the end and kind of cover those at the end. So just put those there. Again, so we're going to go over job tickets, user actions, so selecting metadata, kind of best practices for deploying job tickets, modifying the tickets and creating rules, building some user actions, and then using the job ticket metadata to drive different user actions. As a reminder before Alex gets started, Duo 2016 will be here in New Orleans, April 13th to 15th this year. And so if you remember, go ahead and get registered for that. We'd love to see everybody here. We got Chad Gray and Steve Daniel, or the president and vice president this year. And we're going to be going over things, the latest updates of ES, so they'll be showing ES5, Twist, I guess they're calling it 8, latest version of Dialog, seeing things like archiving, the Creative Cloud plugins, with the new updates they're doing on that, obviously Mike and Ryan's tips and tricks, and a lot more. So please join us for that. You can actually be able to see, get registered for it on the Blanchard Systems website on the Duo-registration. You can also register to the hotel at the URL there. We'll send this information out. And Duo Agenda is a web page we also have that's got the current version of what the agenda is looking like for the event. So please remember to get registered for that. And let me go ahead and turn this over to Alex to get started. So Alex, I'm passing the ball over to you.
Sure thing. Okay, let me know when you can see me and I'll start rolling.
All right, I think we see you.
Okay, good deal. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex, and today I'm going to be demonstrating a few of the workflow and job management related customization features. I'll be particularly focusing on how you can use custom job tickets and user actions to streamline data collection and drive complex on-demand workflows. Some really cool stuff you can do with these tools. For a few of you, we got a pretty diverse group on today, so this might be more of a refresher for some of you, but hopefully you should come away with some good stuff. So first is sort of a basic starting block for this. Maybe you've got a situation where you could use a user action, and what a user action typically is it's sort of a way of encapsulating a workflow.
Are you moving anything in your screen? Because it looks like it might be frozen right now.
Let me see if I've just been talking.
Oh, yeah, okay. No problem. Wanted to make sure.
Yep, thanks for the heads up. But yeah, basically it's user actions are used if you want to kind of encapsulate a workflow in some way. And what it does is it allows you to run a workflow in a protective sort of bubble where you have a little more control over the context it's running in and the deliverables it's producing. So one example for this is, and I do think this is a feature that might be coming in ES5 anyway, but let's say you have sort of a licensing system, like an asset management system set up in ES, and you want to prevent certain users from downloading a high-res file. You want to give them just kind of like a content proof so they can look it over. One example of how you could use a user action to do this is I have a very simple workflow set up here. 2 steps. There's an input files tool, and then there is a twist step called webinar watermark. If I pull up my twist editor here, simple workflow, file just comes in. I have a merge XP here, which just stamps a giant watermark on it. I'm rasterizing it so that no one can get any goodies out of the background of the file, then just smashing it into a PDF 1.4. So the way this is set up in ES, what I could do is I could just set that workflow to be runnable on demand and have it so that I go to workflow, document workflow, start workflow, and start it from there. But maybe I don't want to give a customer, for example, that kind of access. How I would set this up with the user action is if I go under my administration tab, I'm going to go down here to the customization and the user action feature. We'll make one called watermark it. So a few different options here in the setup. The first is you to choose an action template that you want to use. And that's basically what kind of workflow are you running? Are you running a document workflow? Are you running a project workflow? So for now, I'm just going to go with a document workflow. There's other cases where, for example, for a project, you might want to run a user action that modifies something in the background of your job, but 99% of the time you're going to be using a document user action, I would say. You have the choice of workflow action where it gives you just kind of a drop-down list of what workflows are available. I'm going to go down and find my webinar stamped document workflow. You get to choose a context. Am I performing this action on the original user uploaded file, or am I performing it on the current file? So for example, if you had a file that you uploaded and that you ran through some normalization after it came into ES, maybe you want to grab the original for comparison. So you have a little flexibility there. And lastly, you have the ability to choose a target. So workflow driven is the most simple option. That's basically whatever is defined in the workflow is the target for that file. So for example, if you had a workflow that had a document workflow that had a digital delivery step at the very end, then it would just use that digital delivery step and call it a day. The basket allows you to place files into, if you don't see this in your system, there should be a little pop-up here. There's a little tab in the lower left-hand corner. You can bring up a basket, and that's basically kind of like a little staging area for anything that's not related to a project specifically. So that would just be your own custom basket. There's the option to, if you're doing anything with private collections, you can send it to a private collection under the project tab. And then lastly, there's the source object if you want to perform this action on the file. So you run the action and then that file NES is permanently altered. That's another way you can do it. So little control there. There's an enough option for grouping in here, but not going to touch on that yet. We'll come back to that later. I am going to set, you have the ability to choose an icon here. I have this one I kind of like. And if you choose use theme color, then it'll kind of try and parse that into whatever colors you're using in the rest of ES. So I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to save that. What will happen is if I go back to my project here, let me find a page I want to use. So maybe I want to send this page out for that watermark. What I'll do is let's come over here. I have a full list of all my user actions. I'm going to select my user action. It's going to confirm, do you want to run this? And I'm going to say sure. And you'll see over here now we have this little icon in the basket. And what this signifies is we have a user action currently running. And there's three possible statuses here. The green check means it's finished, which this one just did. There's a blue play icon, which means that the action is currently running. And there's a little red minus sign that means that there was an error. So let me pop in here and download this file now that it's done. And if we pull this up, you'll see now that we have a giant red watermark in the middle of the page. But if I go back to my project, for example, this page, original page, is still intact. So one way in a situation where this would be really useful, for example, is you could actually stick this on a smart view so that maybe you have a customer that's only using that smart view to access ES, then they'd only see that option rather than a download option. I'll show you how that works in a little bit. The next trick with this is grouping. Maybe you want to perform, the other benefit of a user action is that you can perform certain operations on a group of files rather than just on one specific document. So one way to set this up, let's make a little test workflow here. And I'll call this contact sheet. And yep, that all looks good to me. So this is going to be a very simple workflow here. I'm going to pull in an input file as always. And I'm going to pull this contact sheet tool in too. What this will do is that takes any incoming file and generates a PDF contact sheet of it. So I'll take that. I'm going to create a user action around that. So again, I'll keep my target as the basket. Pick my workflow there. Contacts will do the current file. I'm deliberately not going to enable grouping right now. So what will happen is if I go back to my project, I got a bunch of different files in here. Let me clear out my basket so it's nice and empty. Maybe I want to get a contact sheet of like 4 or 5 of these pages. Then what I can do is I'll come over here to my user action and select contact sheet. Click OK. But the trick now is you'll see that there's 4 different files running through here, which isn't exactly what we wanted. And if I look at any of these, then let me save this file and open it, for example. You'll see that only has 1 thumbnail on it, so not really the way we want to handle that. So what I'm going to do is go under my user action. Let's see where that's hiding on me. I'm going to click Enable Grouping this time. I'll clear out that. So if I go back here and I rerun this action, let me grab a whole handful of pages here. You can see it's running. This time we only have 1 action here. Now if I go to download and view this, you'll see I have all my thumbnails here. So it's really useful for a situation like this where you need to perform a workflow in a group of files. Might be for a contact sheet, might be if you're writing metadata into files and exporting them, might be if you're in a situation where you're normalizing a bunch of files in Twist and you don't really want to dump them on the file system, but you want them accessible in the basket. So pretty helpful feature for that sort of thing. So the real power of user actions is when it comes to smart views. You do have the ability to embed a user action as an icon in a smart view. So how we'll do that is if I go down here to my customization settings, that's smart view, and I have a little user action smart view I built down here. I think I have a demo one from earlier I'll get rid of. Now if I go down here, you'll see my watermark action is there and has a little icon. Under the action under the action tab, all I have to do is just drag and drop that right in here. Click save, and if I go back to my smart view here, you'll see I have my little icon up here. And if I click on one of these pages, for example, I can just run that watermark user action. That's crunching. If I download that, perfect. So the real utility of that is there's ways you can set under the user profiles, you can set those smart views as the default views for either projects or for search. There's an option under the search menu here in a user profile. You can select a smart view as your search screen. There's also an option under customers project where you can select a browser smart view that will replace the default smart view that's selected in here. So maybe you've got a user from that licensing organization that they never really need to see a real download button. You could make a watermark user action like that, give that a download icon, call it download, and have them use that to download previews of a set. So you can really, really fine-tune the behavior of an ES system for a specific group of users. So that's about the gist of how user actions work. But there might be cases in a production scenario where you don't have the luxury of just having one option like that, where I go in here and I just have a contact sheet option, for example. Real production work can be a little more nuanced or complex. So maybe you want some options in here that you can use to control that job or control that action. Typically the best way to accomplish that is by using what's called a custom job ticket layout. And those are also available under the customization tab here. Let me see if, pretty simple to create one. All you need as a prerequisite generally is you need some form of metadata, and those are defined under metadata sets. So what I'm going to do here is you've got in the system quite a few that are pre-baked in here, and each of these sets a lot of these represent different industry standards. You can see you've got some XMP application metadata here. You've got a metadata set that represents all the Dublin core metadata, or the IPTC core should be down here somewhere too, which are standard metadata sets which are used within other media applications such as the Adobe Creative Cloud product. So a lot of pre-baked stuff in there you can deal with. If you want to create your own, all you have to do is just click this plus here to create a new metadata set. So basically you have some different options in here you have to set it up front. So you set a name which is sort of a user-friendly name for your metadata set. That's something human readable. There's a prefix which is used when metadata is encoded into a file. That prefix is sort of the machine language code for it. And then lastly, you've got a namespace, which is kind of just like a checksum of sorts. Maybe you have a metadata set called my metadata with a certain prefix, and there's another client out there, maybe using ES, maybe using another product completely that has a set of metadata with the same name and prefix. The namespace kind of acts as like an arbiter there that allows you to, the application to determine, okay, these are two separate sets of metadata, even though they have the same name, because they have a separate namespace. So that's how you set up a basic set. If you want to create a metadata property in here to reference something specifically, you just click the little plus. You have an option here, so we'll make one for print type. You have an option, these names always have to be just alphanumeric purely due to some of the XMP standards out there. If you want to give that a more human readable name, what you can do is down here in the translation, I'll type that press type. You have the option to set a default value if you want to. You have the option to set, for example, for this type string, which is just a bunch of text, I have the ability to set a regular expression to control what someone can actually enter in there. A few other types you can choose from. A few of the other basic ones that are pretty popular. Text is kind of like a string, but it's meant for longer form text. Maybe you have like a special instructions field in your job ticket. Enumeration is basically kind of like a closed choice. It's kind of a drop-down list. Boolean is true or false, sort of like a little checkbox. So a few of the basic ones, I'll show them on a job ticket in a few minutes. A few of the more advanced ones, which I'm not going to dig into quite yet, but are worth checking out. There are two database-based ones here, which will pull up, for example, this output channels one. That'll provide a full list of the output channels on your system, so a user could run an action and select a specific output channel, so less logic you'd have to code in your workflow. Or, for example, there's the same option here for a list of users. So pretty straightforward. Let me go ahead and create this print type. I'm actually going to make that an enumeration because maybe it's only litho or gravure. So I'm going to set this in here as litho. And I'll add one more for gravure. So looks good. I'm going to set a default value of gravure. I can set some options in here. For example, if I want this to be a required piece of metadata, I can check that box. And then whenever that's used in a job ticket, the user will have to select an option there. But I'm pretty good with this for now. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to save that. And let's actually do one more for fun. Make one in here. I'm going to make this one a string. And I'll just make this job code. And one heads up to watch out for too, I think there is a UI glitch in some of the recent builds that if you try to edit multiple translations, maybe you create one piece of metadata, add a translation, create another, add a translation, then click save up here, it'll only save the most recent one. So what I would typically recommend if you're doing translations is after you create each piece of metadata, just stop a minute and click save up here to make sure that you maintain everything correctly. So this looks pretty good. Maybe my job code has just, it's 3 letters, a dash, and then 4 digits. I'll just put a regular expression in up here for that. So and I'll make this one required too. So looks pretty good to me. Now, if I want to use this in a job ticket, let me go down here. I'll create a new job ticket. So under this definition page here, you have a few different options. You can choose where this metadata is able to be attached. For example, can this template be attached to a document? Can it be attached to a project? Can it be attached to a workflow? Maybe you've got some pieces of metadata that you might use in multiple applications. Or maybe if it's like, for example, just job settings, you don't want anyone to be able to use it anywhere but a job ticket. You have the ability to control where that is used. So what we'll do here is, let me set this to a project. I have this global option here. If that global option is selected, that's attached to every project in the system. If you don't select that global option, then you have the option to manually attach that in the project template, which I'll show you where that's located a little bit. So I have this all set up. I have the option to choose a number of rows or columns. I'm just going to stick with one of each for now, so that looks good to me. If I go in here now, it'll show me on the right-hand pane all the metadata I have in the system. So I have my hello webinar metadata in here. And if I wanted to use one of those, I can just click and drag it into this field. If I want to be a little more smooth about this, I can put in what's called a field set or a table to help lay this out a little better. So here I'm going to go and edit this, and maybe I want 2 columns, no rows. I'll go in here and I'll name this job options. What I can do in here is, if I go back here, I'll just drag these two. So now if I go to a job on the system, since I set this to be global, you'll see I have a whole bunch of different tabs over here. See if I made my system a little cranky. 1 second. Let me try a different browser. I'll live on the edge.
Yeah, I'll turn a couple of those other ones off, huh?
Yep. I'm living on the edge with beta patches too, so keeps things exciting. Let's see if I can get it in here. If all else fails, let us reboot it. So
I can't say I've ever seen job tickets do that on a system.
So, okay, I think we're back up.
Okay, you good?
Might be another sec till the network kicks up if you had something.
Yeah, Tomcat's still coming up. Let's field a couple of questions while you wait for that. Let's see. We had a question about not being able to use ES Connect in the user action. I can't say I've ever tried it. Mike, have you tried that? I think Mike's on. Mike, you're muted if you're trying to answer.
Yeah, I just unmuted myself.
Hi.
There's no reason you couldn't use ES Connect for a user action.
I think it would depend. If you're just using it, if you're just passing a file to a twist workflow, should work fine. If the workflow would require a job ticket, it wouldn't work, if I'm not mistaken. I think you'd have to
No,
have
even
each twist.
if you took the time to set up the variables you're trying to
That's
pass, you
true. That's
still
true.
could do that. The only thing that might be problematic is using the source option in terms of getting ES Connect to update and write back properly when it's done, but that's a test we would have to do. But the workflow-driven option, there's no reason that that shouldn't work.
And then we had another question about the version of ES that Alex is running. It's ES 4.5, and obviously with some up to date with the latest beta patches.
So,
He just said, "How you looking?" I wasn't paying attention.
yeah, I'm back up to the thanks to the miracle of VM snapshots. So in answer to that one question too, let me pull up, I think I had one of these workflows here. So this is just another one I was playing with earlier, but if I go in here and pull up, for example, in most cases, if you're just using, this workflow actually was using a few different parameters, but if you're not using any variables like this, you can probably get away with using ES Connect. So anyway, as to building a job ticket.
Again, though, I'll point out that with ES Connect, you can still pass the variables to the workflow. The interface in that tool will look different, but it can still be done. So I'll shut up now and let you get back to it.
Okay, so let's do this. I'll create a make a webinar demo ticket. Once again, we'll have this as one by one. Try again my field set. I'll call this job options. If I go back here, let me go under, I have one of my 4 webinars here. So I got one here for MIS job code, and I have one here for press type. So if I go back to my, here I now have a tab for webinar demo. I have my press types litho and digital actually from this example, and I have a MIS job code available here that I can set. And this does have a regular expression configured like the one I just showed a few minutes ago. So you can see here the value in this field is invalid. If I try and type ABC, it doesn't like it. Once I put in 4 digits, it becomes valid. So if you have some fields where you have a very specific kind of data you need to collect, you have the flexibility to do so. So that's about the basics of setting up a job ticket. Now, how you would reference this in a workflow, let me actually save my changes in there. I'm going to go ahead and actually upload a file here. I'll run a file through workflow, see if I have anything good here. I'll grab one of my sample files from earlier. So if I pull up, the best way to reference this in a workflow is if I pull up this, I can go in here. I'm at the end of my workflow, so I'm going to go under workflow log and show context. And this is going to show me every variable that I have or every piece of metadata associated with my file. So here, for example, I should have job metadata. You can see I have my 4 webinar. I have some information here as far as my MIS job code. I have a few others as far as press type is digital, so you have some control over what's set there. One thing that's really handy is if you want to reference this metadata within a ES like programmatic link, the easiest way is to just click select it here, and you just click this eye icon up here, and it'll give you the Java code to grab that variable. So if I wanted to reference this, for example, in a step in a workflow, let me pull up my workflows tab here. So if I wanted to put it in one of these workflows, for example, and just grab that and pull it into the workflow, I can just copy and paste that in. So that way it's going to look for my job MIS code here. And it's going to look actually specifically the way this works. This is one of the most common functions for grabbing metadata from a file NES. This context.get metadata. It takes 3 arguments in most cases. The first is for what this metadata is associated with. If you have a job ticket attached to somewhere, it keeps track of where that metadata is set. So in this case, it's job. If it were attached to a file, it would be page order. If it were attached to a workflow or a user action, that would be listed as workflow. I have my metadata set name here, and then I have my metadata property here. So this way I could, if I wanted to do an if statement, I could do like a if ABC1234 equals MDT. That's my variable. And what that would do is that link, it would only follow that link if that metadata I pulled matched that entry there. Otherwise, it would go down if I had another path, for example. So it's the basics of how that's set up. I do have one more example with a, I know we're getting tight on time, so I'll try and keep this
quick.
quick.
One example, and I'll do the rest of the questions.
Sure thing. So one thing I did build here is I built a simple workflow. So we have a webinar multi-channel workflow here. And what this is going to do is I'm collecting from a job ticket a few different fields. Let me actually attach that job ticket real quick. I'll show you. See where I got this hiding. So if I want to attach that job ticket, I'll make a action, multi-channel action here. I'm going to take this and I'm going to use my webinar multi-channel workflow. Target's going to be my basket, and the context is going to be the current file. I'm going to enable grouping for this one. That workflow I have set up for this, that webinar multi-channel up here, that has a job ticket. Actually, it doesn't have it attached right now, but for prep action, we'll use that one. So what that's going to do is mean any user action that uses this workflow as its kind of target is going to use that job ticket. So if I come into the workflow here, pretty simple thing. What it's going to be doing is, actually, I don't know that link, but it's going to come in, it's going to go to an eTwist workflow that's set up for multi-channel, then it's going to go to a document step to create a new document. What this workflow is going to do is basically, I'll pull up the job ticket and show you how this is set up. So if I go back to my area here, I got this file. If I go to user action and multi-channel action, you'll see I have a few different options set in here. So I have the option to choose make high res, make CT-Vec, or make thumbnail. So maybe I want to do just a thumbnail. What pops up here is this is the result of what's known as a action underneath or a rule underneath a metadata set. So I can choose here now, do I want my thumbnail to be a PNG or JPEG? But this workflow basically will generate a thumbnail if required. It'll make a CT vector PDF for digital edition if required, and it will also make a high-res print-ready PDF with decorations and trim marks if required. And if I select some of these options, I get different options down here in my template. So for example, if I switch from litho to digital, I get a few different options down here. So that's how that's set up on the front end. So let's say if I want to make a thumbnail, for example, make a PNG. The way this is set up is in the customization here, there is a tab when you create a job ticket. I have one here. There is a tab that is known as the Rules tab here. And what that Rules tab does is That allows you to define rules that can be used to change the criteria on a job ticket based on other information within that job ticket. The way these rules work is you set a rule and set basically like a target. So I have different targets here I had a few different groups of objects on my page. I had one for digital options, one for litho options. And within each of these, they're set up so that you can set criteria that can be used to show or hide different elements. So this rule will only be active if my press type is set to litho. If my press type isn't set to litho, then this rule will be active. If this rule is active, then it'll hide the litho options pane. If my press type isn't litho, I don't need to see those options. So I've got a number of options set up like that. So for example, another one for an object here. If I'm not generating a thumbnail, and my make thumbnail boolean is false, then hide the thumbnail options there. So the way that works is my workflow here, once it comes in, I have I'm using that context, that get metadata command, to pull all my metadata from the workflow or the job ticket layout and push that into Twist, as I have a few PPD variables set up in Twist. If you haven't played with those before, they're under configure PPD variables, and you have some options in here. So I have all my variables set with names for the Twist table. So what will happen is when I run stuff through here, I actually might have to relog into editor since I rebooted this thing. But what will happen is it'll go through and make whatever type of file I requested. So if I go here, for example, let me go back to my job. Multi-channel action. And I'm going to make just a thumbnail this time. And I want my thumbnail to be a JPEG.
You notice that while it's running in Twist, you'll see the blue arrow in his basket, and then it'll go check mark as soon as it's finished. So it kind of does give you a notion of what's going on, which I believe they're improving even further in ES5. ES5 will actually have better logging of these events.
Correct, and yeah, so you can see here this generated a JPEG. If I were to rerun that action, let's actually make that a little more fun, and we'll be wrapping up in a minute too, but multi-channel action here. This time I'm going to make a high-res. I'm going to make a high-res that is a X1A, and I'm going to make a thumbnail that's a PNG. So if I go back to editor, I should see those running through right now. It will be if I go over here to my download now. I have some folders in there, so I've got one for now. I got a PNG preview this time, crop to trim, and I got a high-res PDF that is decorated with marks for print, and I got color bars too. So it's about the basic examples of some of what you can do with user actions and job ticketing within ES. I know we're running short on time. I apologize if I glossed over a few of the subjects that you were more interested in, but if you have any questions or there's anything you need me to elaborate on, just let me know.
All right, I'm going to take the ball back now. And we're going to go over a couple of questions. We have a couple more to cover. One, clarification a little bit on the question before about ES Connect. The customer did mention that apparently the documentation states it doesn't work. So we'll look into that. We'll test it and send an email out to everybody on it. We'll just do some testing on that. Because as Mike said, I'm not sure why it wouldn't work if it's just typical variables like we're used to in a workflow. Earlier, I missed a question somebody asked, I think in the middle, and then maybe I should have left your screen up, Alex, but it was in the middle of when you were going over the metadata types, I believe. They said, what is the twist type? I guess it's one of the metadata types. I'm not sure. I've really played with that one.
Yeah, I think that's meant more for, I haven't played with it too much, but I think it's formatted so they can be easily pushed into Twist.
Okay. All right. And then another question we have is there a job ticket option that allows for contact sheet customization? So I guess someone's looking to customize the job ticket. And I think right now, other than the way it looks with the current metadata that's available to put on it, I don't think there's any customization as far as logos or anything you can do right now, unless Alex or Mike, you know of anything different than that.
No, but I mean, usually through a default install, there is a contact sheet job ticket that's kind of been
Yeah, I think
pre-filled.
I'm wondering if they're actually. I think the question here may be in reference to like putting a logo on it or anything like that, customized from that standpoint, which I don't think is possible right now.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen that in ES5 either, but that may be something that would be good to bring up and talk about at Duo with the Dalim guys. We have a question on the licensing, basically. I think other than your core, dialogue engine type licenses for ES, the stuff that Alex showed today, you would also require a job ticket option and enterprise project tracking. I think those licenses would cover, those modules would cover what Alex was showing today. And obviously the twist as well, if you're actually pushing anything to twist, whether it's eTwist or ES twist. And the last question I think I had is ability to hide user actions in a smart view. Currently, if you, in ES4.5, if you put user actions in a smart view, basically everyone would have access to that. In ES5, they are changing that. They're adding permissions, and you can customize that a lot further, where some users could be kept from seeing specific options inside of a smart view. So it's going to be a lot easier to customize it for different things without having to have different smart views for different users, and that you'll be able to hide some of the functions. So I believe that covers all the questions, unless you guys saw something different. Again, as a reminder, we've moved the webinars back to the third Wednesday of each month to split it up from a couple of other webinars we're doing on the semi-ad and virtual publisher side. You can go to our events page at blanchardsystems.com to view the schedule, and as soon as we get the agenda set up for it, we'll post that, update the website, and send out information as well as what we're doing. We will have one next month, and hopefully I'll try to cover maybe some twist stuff or ES. I'm just trying to stay away from anything that's going to step on the toes of things that will be covered at Duo or will get too redundant. So as soon as I have an idea of what I'm going to be doing for that, I'll send it out. If you have any ideas or would like to see us cover something, again, please email us at text@blanchard.com and we'll be happy to cover it for you. So everyone have a great day and great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks a lot.